Let's talk about something I think a lot of us know deep down. The people pleaser's tightrope. It's that feeling, right? That constant, totally draining effort to keep everyone else happy, almost always at your own expense.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Have you ever done this? You're at your desk, you're at a party, and someone asks for a favor, and you feel it, that internal, full-body scream of no. But before you can even process what it's going to cost you, your time, your energy, the word yes is already out of your mouth. That exact moment, that's what we're going to dive into.
So what is actually happening in that split second? Let's take a closer look. We're going to break down the anatomy of what is essentially an automatic response, what we're calling the reflexive yes.
And it happens so fast. It's like this three-act play. First, there's the ask. Someone needs something from you. Then, bam, step 2 is the reflex. That word yes just flies out of your mouth, maybe even with a smile. It's only later, in the aftermath, that it all sinks in. You finally start to process the real cost to your own time, your energy, and your peace.
And here's the kicker, isn't it? The result of all this is this slow-burning resentment. But the craziest part is, it's not even directed at the person who asked. Nope. All of that frustration gets pointed right back at yourself. You get mad at you for not holding the line, for letting that automatic yes win again. You know, this isn't really about these single, isolated moments. It's so much bigger. It's a constant, absolutely exhausting balancing act. It's like you're walking on this tightrope of expectations, just desperately trying to keep everyone's approval, no matter the cost to you.
And there's this huge disconnect, this gap between their world and your world. To them, you just seemed helpful and agreeable. It was just a small favor, right? But in your reality, it's a completely different story. That small favor feels like a heavy burden, and that agreeable smile is really just masking that deep, internal resentment.
So why? Why do we do this? Well, when you boil it all down, it's fear. It's this deep-seated terror of seeing even a momentary frown on someone's face, or sensing just a slight dip in their opinion of you. To a people pleaser, those little signals can feel, well, they feel absolutely catastrophic. And that is the danger you're always trying to avoid. Every no feels like taking one step closer to the edge of a cliff, the risk of just crashing into the abyss of being unlikable. That word, it carries so much weight, and the fear of it just runs the whole show. Okay, so this is where we need to kind of shift our perspective. Let's stop looking at this as some simple personality flaw we have to fix. Instead, let's get to the bottom of it by asking a much deeper question. Who is the real architect of your life? And let's be super clear here. This isn't about assertiveness training or learning some clever script to say no. No, the goal here is to go deeper. It's about looking into those quiet shadows of your mind to really, truly understand the powerful why that's driving this entire pattern. Because here's the thing, being a people pleaser is not just about being nice. It goes way, way deeper than that. It's actually a deep-seated survival mechanism. It's a part of you that has become absolutely convinced that your safety, your very belonging in the world, is tied directly to how useful you are to other people. And once that belief takes root, the fear of rejection stops being just a fear. It becomes the primary architect of your life. I mean, think about that. It designs your choices, it builds your boundaries, or more often, it doesn't build any at all, and it dictates the terms of all of your relationships. So if it's this massive force in our lives, what's it all for? What is this whole complex system really defending us against? Why does this pattern have such a powerful grip on so many of us? Well, that constant, exhausting need to be the agreeable one, that's just the first layer. It's the outer wall of this really complex defense system. And that entire system, the whole thing, is designed for one single purpose, to keep the profound, deep pain of isolation safely at bay. It's a shield. And look, it's a powerful shield. It's probably done its job pretty well. But that leaves us with one final and really crucial question to reflect on. What if the very walls you've so carefully built to keep the pain of rejection out are the same exact walls that are keeping real, authentic connection from ever getting in?
Today, we're diving into something I think a lot of us struggle with, even if we don't have a name for it. It's called the approval trap. And we're going to explore this wild idea that your deep-seated need to be nice might actually be costing you, well, everything. So let me just start by asking you this. Have you ever found yourself saying yes to something while, every single fiber of your being was just screaming no? You know the moment someone asks for a favor and the yes just kind of falls out of your mouth before your brain can even catch up? And then what comes next? It's that quiet, slow-burning resentment. But here's the interesting part, right? That resentment usually isn't for the person who asked you. Nope. It's aimed right back at yourself. You're just left sitting there, kicking yourself, wondering, why did I do that again? This really just hits the nail on the head. It feels like you're walking on a tightrope, just constantly, desperately trying to balance everybody else's expectations. You're so afraid that one wrong move, one little no, is going to make the whole thing come crashing down. And man, is it exhausting. So what is actually happening in those moments? Let's get past the feeling and look at what's really going on underneath. It's time for the diagnosis. What we're really talking about here isn't just being nice. It's something deeper, a pattern some psychologists call approval addiction. And it's basically a deep-seated survival mechanism. It's this learned belief that your safety, your very worth as a person, is directly tied to how useful you are to other people. And what happens is you learn over time that just being invisible or being incredibly useful, well, that feels a whole lot safer than being your actual authentic self. Your choices stop being about what you want and start being about just avoiding conflict at all costs. It's like a shield you've built to protect yourself. And you know what? There's actually a scientific name for this. In behavioral psychology, it's called the fawn response. You've heard of fight or flight, right? Well, this is another one. It's an automatic reaction to what you perceive as a threat. But instead of fighting or running away, you try to appease the other person. You try to de-escalate things by becoming whatever you think they want you to be in that moment. And this brings us to an absolutely crucial distinction. See, genuine kindness comes from a place of strength. It's a real choice you make. But people-pleasing, that's totally different. It's driven by a reflexive, automatic fear. It's not a choice at all. It's a reaction, an attempt to neutralize a threat that might not even exist. But living like this, it comes with a seriously steep price tag. So let's talk about that. Section 2, the cost of counterfeit peace. The first huge cost is something we can call boundary erosion. When you're constantly looking to others for your sense of self-worth, you literally start to lose track of where you end and other people begin. And pretty soon, your own needs, your own desires, they start to feel like inconvenient interruptions. So why does saying no feel so absolutely terrifying? Well, on a primal level, your brain interprets that no as a potential death sentence to a relationship. I'm not kidding. It triggers this ancient, deep-seated fear of being kicked out of the tribe. And for our ancestors, that meant almost certain death. So no wonder it feels so impossibly hard to do. But here is the bitter truth, the absolute paradox at the center of all of this. When you spend your life trying to please everyone, you inevitably end up pleasing no one. And you know who you please the least? Yourself. All that effort is not only draining, it just doesn't work. So let's just break down the poison of this counterfeit peace. You start to feel like a hollow shell. You're trading your real, authentic self for this fragile, temporary truce. And all of this leads to what's called silent resentment. And it's a poison that slowly, quietly kills your relationships from the inside out. Okay, that is a pretty grim picture, I know. But here's the thing. Understanding the problem is always the first step to fixing it. So how do we get beyond the mask? This right here, this is probably the most important shift in thinking you can make. You aren't being good, you are being governed. Governed by fear. You're governed by this little story in your head that whispers, you're only valuable as long as you're convenient for everyone else. So the path forward, it actually starts with awareness. Step 1 is simply to recognize that a lot of your niceness is really a mask. And then step 2 is to acknowledge the fear that made you put that mask on in the first place. That's it. That's the start. And this is where the magic happens. Because once you can recognize that what you call niceness is often just a cover for your fear, you can finally start to take apart that cage of external validation that you've been living inside. And that brings us to the last and maybe the most important question I want to leave you with today. Just take a second and really honestly think about it. Who would you be if you no longer needed their approval?
Let's talk about something I think we've all felt. Have you ever found yourself saying yes when every single part of you, deep down, was just screaming no? Well, today we're going to dive into that instinct to please. But here's the thing, we're not going to treat it like some kind of character flaw. No. Instead, let's just take a breath together and realize that your desire to be liked, it's fundamentally human. It comes from this really deep place that just wants to be safe,
to belong, and to feel valued. So you ready? Let's get into it. So what does this drive to be valued actually feel like in our day-to-day lives? Honestly, for a lot of us, it feels like we're walking on this exhausting tightrope. We're constantly trying to balance everyone else's needs and expectations against our own. It's all about that hidden cost of always saying yes.
I mean, really, think about it for a second. You know the moment, you're swamped at your desk, or maybe you're out with friends just trying to relax, and someone asks for a favor. And before your brain can even begin to calculate the cost to your own time, your own energy, the word yes just flies out of your mouth. It's like a reflex, right?
And this is the part that really stings, isn't it? The frustration, that slow burn you feel all day. It's not even aimed at the person who asked. Nope, it's turned inward, at yourself. You start asking, why did I do that again? Why am I so terrified of a momentary frown, of someone's opinion of me just dipping for a second? And man, that is such a heavy weight to carry around all day.
This right here, this is the feeling at its core. It's this constant, high-stakes performance, a high-wear act where saying no just once feels like it could send you tumbling down into this giant abyss of being seen as difficult or unhelpful or even worse, just unlikable. It is absolutely exhausting.
Okay, but what if all that exhaustion isn't actually a sign that you're weak? What if it's just a sign that the map we've all been using to navigate our social world is, well, just a little outdated? Maybe it's time we reframe that internal compass. And here's where we see this huge shift in perspective. The old story, the one you've probably been telling yourself for years, is all about self-criticism. I'm weak. But the real story? It's so much more compassionate. Your desire to be liked, that urge to keep the peace, that is not weakness. That's a fundamental survival instinct that is hardwired into our DNA. So here's the crucial point. That strategy, that way of being that kept you safe when you were a kid, or maybe in a past job or relationship, it might not be serving you anymore. It's not a personal failing on your part. It's just an old map that's now leading you to places of exhaustion instead of, fulfillment.
But if this is just an old, outdated map, where did it come from? To really get that, we need to look at the architect behind all of our defenses: fear. We have to understand the very architecture that built these walls in the first place.
So let's redefine this whole idea. People-pleasing isn't just about being nice. No way. It's a deep-seated survival mechanism that has tricked you into believing that your safety is directly tied to how useful you are to other people. It's a system where so many of us are taught right from childhood that our value is basically a reflection of how little trouble we cause. And when you dig down underneath it all, you find the master architect, the fear of rejection. This fear builds an entire defense system designed to protect you from that deep, primal pain of being cast out or isolated, and every single reflexive yes is just another brick in that wall.
This leads us straight to the core problem with this entire strategy. When you follow that outdated map, it sets you on this completely unwinnable chase for something that is, by its very nature, a moving target.
Just think about this for a second. That polished, agreeable, always helpful version of you that you put out there for the world to see. Well, that version is not nearly as important as the version of you that you can actually live with. Because at the end of the day, when the performance is over and the curtains close, you're the one who has to sit with the resentment, with the exhaustion. Your own peace, that's what truly matters. And here's the secret. People's opinions, their moods, their expectations, they change all the time, constantly. Trying to win universal approval is like trying to hit a target that's always shifting in the wind. You will burn yourself out long before you ever get close to hitting it.
So, okay, if chasing approval is a losing game, then what's the alternative? Well, it starts by giving yourself permission. Permission to be real. It's all about building new internal systems designed not for everyone else, but to protect your own peace.
This is the ultimate goal shift right here. See, true belonging doesn't come from erasing your own needs just to be perfectly agreeable. It comes from the courage to show up as you actually are, imperfectly real with needs and boundaries and opinions, and still be absolutely worthy of connection. And that, right there, is the most crucial takeaway. The only validation that can bring you lasting peace, the kind that quiets all that noise in your head, it doesn't come from your boss or your partner or your friends. It's the approval you finally grant yourself when you decide that your time,
your energy, and your truth are worth defending.
So, I'll leave you with this question. What would change for you? What would your life look like if you truly believed you didn't need anyone else's permission to take up space, to have needs, to say no? What if, from this place of gentle self-acceptance, you just stopped asking for permission to exist and started building a life that you can actually live with?
All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to talk about a habit that feels, well, it feels pretty small, but the consequences are huge. I'm talking about that reflexive, almost painful habit of saying yes when every single part of you is screaming no. This is about finding a way out.
I mean, really think about it. That moment when someone asks you for something and before your brain can even catch up, the word yes is already hanging in the air. And you're just left with this pit in your stomach, this quiet resentment that starts to bubble up. And it's usually pointed right back at yourself, isn't it?
And wow, this just hits the nail on the head. It's this constant, absolutely exhausting performance. You're up there on that tightrope, trying to keep everyone happy, just terrified that one little no is going to make the whole thing come crashing down. The source material calls this habit reflexive, polite, and devastating. And yep, that's exactly what it is.
Okay, so here's the most important part. We have to completely reframe this whole thing. This is not about you being too nice. It's not a personality flaw. It goes so much deeper than that. This is a survival mechanism, a defense system you built a long, long time ago.
Just let that sink in for a second. At some point in your life, you learned that being useful, being helpful, was the best way to guarantee your spot, to avoid the pain of being rejected or left out. So your fear of being disliked has literally become the primary architect of your life, making choices that put everyone else's comfort way ahead of your own peace.
And this is where it gets so clear. Look at the difference here. On the left, you've got a genuine choice to help somebody. It comes from a place where you actually have the time and energy to give, and it feels good, right? But on the right, well, that's the reality for the people pleaser. It is not a choice, it's a compulsion. It's driven by fear, and it almost always ends with that same old, tired feeling of resentment.
Okay, so we get the why now. We understand where this comes from. So let's talk about the how. How do we actually start to take this apart? We're not going to try to change your entire personality in one day. No way. Instead, we're just going to run a very simple, super low-stakes experiment.
This little phrase right here, this is your new secret weapon. It is not a no. It's not a yes. It is a tool of reclamation. This is you buying yourself the most valuable thing you have, time. Time to actually stop and check in with yourself.
The process could not be simpler. First, you just listen to the request. Second, you state the phrase, just calmly, no big apology needed. Now, here comes the most important part, step 3. You just sit with it. You let yourself feel that anxiety, that discomfort of not immediately saying yes. And then you just watch. You notice what happens. You're just gathering data. That's it. Just give yourself 24 hours. The goal of this first little experiment isn't even to say no. It's just to prove to your own nervous system that the world does not, in fact, spin off its axis when you don't give an immediate answer. You're just collecting proof that a little pause is totally survivable. Now look, this 24-hour pause, that's your foot in the door. That's your first real step to getting your agency back. But understanding the psychology, knowing why you're afraid, that's only the beginning. To really truly break free from that puppet master of social approval, you need a structural change in how you operate. And that's the crucial part. Lasting freedom, real freedom. It requires a system. You have to build a set of personal boundaries that doesn't depend on how you feel in the heat of the moment. Because you know what? In that moment, your fear is always going to be screaming the loudest.
So this is the path forward. This is the key transition. We move from just observing the problem. That's the work of the heart, understanding your feelings, to optimizing the system. That's the work of the mind. That's where we start building real frameworks and setting boundaries with precision.
And this, right here, this is the ultimate goal. The point isn't just to be nice to everybody else. The point is to become the person who is finally, truly honest with themselves. If you are ready to learn those frameworks, that systems thinking required to build that unshakable sense of self, then join me on our main channel. That's where we take these silent struggles and turn them into a real life of mastery. Just really think about that for a minute. All of that time, all of that energy you spend walking that tightrope for everyone else, what could you build with it if it was yours again? Subscribe to both channels and let's find out together. Your evolution continues now.